Hello, my name is Pat Matriciano. I'm the producer of the video Obstruction of Justice. When I first heard of the plight of Linda Ives, I was moved to do whatever I could to assist the Ives family in obtaining justice. The making of this video is my way of helping to achieve that goal. Since the video's initial release in 1996, a number of significant events involving this case have transpired. Events which could have a potentially devastating effect on this nation. I would like to take this opportunity to bring you up to date. After nearly a decade of character assassination by Dan Harmon and members of the Arkansas media, Jean Duffy was finally vindicated. It became obvious that she had been telling the truth all along when on May 13, 1997, Harmon was convicted in federal court on a number of charges, including drug trafficking, extortion, abuse of power, and racketeering. The racketeering charge was an indication Harmon had been involved in organized crime.
What was the racketeering charge again? If that appears to be, is that what you're saying is the most important one?
That is the most serious charge. And the racketeering charge is that he was operating the prosecuting attorney's office and the drug task force for his own benefit.
As a criminal organization?
Yes,
So
as
it's
a criminal organization.
So it's the most symbolic.
It's the most serious.
Harmon is currently serving time in federal prison. His convictions have become an embarrassment to the Arkansas political elite, who have vigorously defended him over the years. The walls of the corrupt Arkansas political machine and the corrupt media that protected it were finally beginning to crack. Missing from the charges against Harmon, however, was the charge of murder. This was inexplicable, since an eyewitness had stepped forward who could identify Dan Harmon as being on the tracks with Kevin and Don on the night of their murders. This witness had previously passed an FBI polygraph and had been placed in protective custody by the FBI.
So would you say you're 100% sure?
So that was 200% sure it was Danny Harmon, without any doubt.
Without any doubt.
I think that if the murder charge had been included in the RICO count as it should have been, there may very well have been a murder conviction today as well, and I'm very disappointed that and angry that the government refused to include that in their RICO count. I believe that the case deserves to be heard before a jury at least, and I think the outcome could have been very similar today. He could have been a convicted murderer.
Our search for justice suffered a tremendous blow when in 1997 I was sued for $16 million by two Arkansas police officers whose names were mentioned during one scene in the tape. This was the scene in question.
Eyewitnesses had implicated several people in the murders and subsequent cover-up, including Prosecutor Dan Harmon, Deputy Prosecutor Richard Garrett, Sheriff Jim Steed, and Officers Jay Campbell, Kirk Lane, and Danny Allen.
This is News 4 at 10, where the news comes first.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you for watching. I'm Kent Bates.
I'm Denise Whitaker. Our lead story tonight takes us to federal court and a civil trial expected to wrap up with a verdict today. Instead, it's a few days off for a federal jury deliberating a defamation suit. The suit claims two Pulaski County deputies are wrongly connected to a double murder. Bob Clausen joins us from the News Center with more. Bob?
Well, Denise, this is all about a documentary that outlines the murder of Don Henry and Kevin Ives, said to have been killed by a train initially, but some investigators say that they were murdered after witnessing a drug drop back in 1987.
Over the past 5 days, the jury has sat through testimony defending and attacking the documentary. Tonight at issue, did the documentary's producer wrongly attach Lieutenant Jay Campbell and Lieutenant Kirk Lane to the alleged crime, and should they receive compensation?
If we lose this suit, this is not a blow just to us. We're just little people. It is a blow to everybody that's in the media, every television station, every video producer, every movie maker is going to be held accountable in a way that is very dangerous.
Regardless, their attorney says that their reputations have been seriously damaged by the allegations.
Now, some people are convinced the young men were killed by law enforcement and that a cover-up began immediately. However, that has never been proven, and that is not the issue before the jury. This is a civil trial. Both men have said that money is not the issue here. They say that they want to be disconnected from the allegations that they played a role in the death of 2 young men.
Bob, thank you.
Officers Jay Campbell and Kirk Lane filed a lawsuit in the U.S. District Court against myself and my company. The star witness for their side turned out to be none other than Detective John Brown. While under oath, John Brown perjured himself by claiming he'd warned me not to use Campbell or Lane's names in the video. This was a lie. Brown never said not to use their names, and in fact had insisted to me and my staff that they were indeed the primary suspects in the Ives-Henry murders. Both Linda Ives and Gene Duffy concurred with this conclusion and testified in trial that they believed Campbell and Lane were the hands-on killers and that the government was protecting them. In this unused video clip, Brown once again repeats his belief that Jay Campbell and Kirk Lane are the primary suspects in the Ives-Henry murders.
You mentioned Jay Campbell earlier. Yeah. He called me about a month and a half ago and asked me if I'd heard about Lassiter being involved in anything else.
Watch what you say to Jay Campbell. Be real careful.
Because I've known Jay for about 8 years.
I don't care. You be real careful.
Who is that?
Jay Campbell's head
of the narcotics
division for Pulaski County.
There's been, rumors circulating in Pulaski County for a number of years about Jay. I have heard several reports of, and intelligence reports that he is involved in some stuff he shouldn't be involved in.
Well, I've seen intelligence reports where Jay Campbell's admitted that he was telling Dan Lassiter when they were looking at him on drugs. The paperwork that we've got, it's listed in there to where Jay Campbell was flying to Fayetteville with them and was actually telling Lassiter, hey, you're being investigated.
The problem I have with it, he and Kirk Lane both, is are very early on in the Henry and Ives homicide, the 2 boys on the tracks, their name appeared as possible suspects.
John Brown's friend and an assistant on the case, Constable Harmon Reeves, also confirmed what John Brown had always maintained was the truth about the case.
Don and Kevin had been on the tracks and approached by another group of people, which was Mr. Harmon and 4 other people, and they ran away from them and got away. And then as the boys were trying to call for help or add a phone, that's when Mr. Campbell and Mr. Lane pulled up and apprehended them at that point. Kirk Lane and Jay Campbell pulled up in a car and jumped out to grab the 2 boys, and one went after Don, one went after Kevin. Kevin, the .22, was leaned up against one of the posts there, and he reached around to get the .22 and come around. When he did, every which officer was grabbing for him, grabbed the .22 from him and swung around and hit Kevin beside the head with a sharp blow enough to knock him unconscious at that point.
It wasn't until a lawsuit was filed against me by Campbell and Lane that John Brown decided to change his story. Before I even knew I was being sued, Brown had met with Campbell and his attorney and had filed a false affidavit stating he had been edited out of context. However, not one instance of Brown being edited out of context could be found. In fact, John Brown had previously given his approval over the content of the finished video, commended my staff a number of times for their work in the video, promoted the video on scores of radio programs, ordered more than 300 copies of the video, which he sold for profit, and used the video as part of an unsuccessful campaign for sheriff. John Brown had succeeded in doing what Dan Harmon, Chuck Banks, and the FBI had done a decade before. That is, to win the trust of Linda Ives, to take charge of the investigation, and then to systematically destroy it. Much of the evidence supporting our case was barred from the courtroom by the judge, including testimony concerning the disappearance of an eyewitness who could identify Campbell and Lane as the killers. Also barred were state police reports describing intimidation and violence by Campbell and Lane against witnesses in other cases. A number of character witnesses testified on behalf of Campbell and Lane, detailing what great guys, caring people, and trusted officers they were. However, as with Dan Harmon before them, these witnesses turned out to be wrong. Following my trial, Campbell was fired by the Pulaski County Sheriff's Department for intimidating and blacklisting fellow officers and for falsifying reports. One of the character witnesses who testified on behalf of Campbell, that is FBI agent Mike Smith, was not allowed to be impeached or cross-examined by our attorney regarding his bias, prejudice, and conflict of interest. Ultimately, the jury was made to feel that they had no choice but to find in favor of the plaintiffs and against us. The judge cited John Brown's testimony as the key factor in upholding the jury's decision.
Our lead story tonight, there is a verdict in the federal civil defamation trial brought by 2 sheriff's deputies against the makers of a documentary film. A jury today found the filmmakers guilty of publishing a false and damaging statement about 2 Pulaski County Sheriff's lieutenants. Kim Miller has been covering this trial this past week. She joins us now from the News Center. Kim?
Kent, the jury ordered the filmmaker to pay the lieutenants a total just under $600,000. The case started when Jeremiah Films produced a documentary about the murders of 2 boys found on Saline County train tracks in 1987. $109,750 in compensatory damages and $200,000 in punitive for Lieutenant Jay Campbell. Lieutenant Kirk Lane was awarded $89,000 compensatory damages and $200,000 punitive. Those involved in making the film say the case is by no means over.
We will argue for a directed verdict, and if we don't receive one, we will appeal. And I believe that justice will prevail in the end. We're not going to give up.
I don't think there's any doubt in anybody's mind what the facts were, and that Linda and I are absolutely convinced that the plaintiffs were the hands-on killers.
I've been told by a number of insiders that I am receiving political payback as a result of my involvement in an earlier video called The Clinton Chronicles. Whether or not that's the case, this type of legal harassment must not be allowed to continue. Should the ruling on this case stand, it will set one of the most dangerous precedents in American history. From now on, free speech will be severely limited. Small companies such as mine, who wish to hold public officials accountable for their actions, may very well be threatened with legal action and put out of business. Individuals will be forced to reconsider before saying or publishing anything negative about any public official. This case is now in the 8th Circuit Court of Appeals. Regardless of the outcome, we're going to continue to fight on behalf of Linda Ives and do whatever we can to see that justice will prevail.
Since the finding against the producer of Obstruction of Justice, Pat Matriciana, Jeremiah Films, and Citizens for Honest Government, that finding has now been reversed by the United States Court of Appeals, 8th District, by a unanimous vote of all judges, dismissing all claims by Jay Campbell and Kurt Lane, and finding in favor of Pat Matriciana, Jeremiah Films, and Citizens for Honest Government. The First Amendment has been upheld.